1, 2, 3, So, anyway, the Governor-General's having a bit of a lie-in on Mother's Day when tap, 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 there's Malcolm Turnbull at the French windows, demanding Parliament be dissolved. I've already dissolved it once, says the Governor-General, not unreasonably. Well, I want you to re-dissolve it, you outdated sybil of our colonial past, says Malcolm, who is, you remember, a Republican. Anyway, long story short, that's the end of my story. And according to the election countdown jumbotron, there's only 52 more sleeps, 54 if they do a couple of debates, until we find out once and for all who's running this country for the next couple of years. And despite the cuts to the ABC News budget, perhaps even because of them, we will be here every step of the way for 26 minutes a week, doing whatever it is we do. Incidentally, I do want to thank very much Charlie Pickering for keeping the seat warm for me during the break. In fact, I think we have some footage of Charlie keeping my seat warm. Thank you, Charlie. But I'll be honest with you, I'm finding it difficult to be mad as hell about anything specific tonight because things are pretty good at the moment. Got the election, as I just mentioned, the economy's doing well, interest rates are low, which is great if you need a loan for something like a packet of cigarettes. So I'm not so much mad as hell as... What's a good way of describing it? Because I'm happy. No, that's overstating it a little. In fact, there's a couple of issues that I'm quite the opposite of glad as hell about. First of all this whinging about the election itself. Typical Labor Senator Stephen Conroy thinks that the government used the ABCC bill to manipulate the Governor-General, to recall Parliament just to contrive a double dissolution trigger. He thinks it's a cynical echo of the 1975 constitutional crisis.
The ghost of Sir John Kerr has crawled and reached out from the grave.
Now, lecturer at politics at Box Hill, TAFE, Moog, Puppet. I guess the key question here is why would Sir John's ghost still be in his grave?
Well, that's more a question for Sir John's ghost, I think, Shaun.
I mean, you don't bury a ghost anyway, do you?
No. Traditionally, they are free to move around away from the confines of the grave.
And why would a ghost crawl anyway? Ghosts don't crawl, do they? There'd be no need for a ghost to crawl.
I think in the case of Sir John's ghost, Shaun, it was probably shit-faced.
Thanks very much, Moog. The other thing that makes me a little sad as hell this week is that because of the election, we're going to lose a number of people who have become good friends of the show over the last few years. For example, the member for Fairfax, Clive Palmer. Now, it's very easy to dismiss Clive as an idiot. All you need is any picture of him and the word idiot underneath. But last week he cleverly launched a preemptive strike on the certainty of his not being re-elected by deciding not to run anyway. But rest assured he will still be involved with the federal government, specifically as a defendant in their claim to recover the $700 million they've paid on his behalf to the Queensland nickel workers. Still, I'm sure Clive will be fine. Don't worry, he's managed to get out of more difficult things than this. In fact, I think we have footage of Clive getting out of a more difficult thing. There we go. I mean, if he can get out of that, he can get out of anything, can't he? Another likely casualty is motoring enthusiast Senator Ricky Muir, seen here strangling a member of an outlaw motorcycle gang. And if he goes, that's a real shame, because in a world where politicians employ spin and obfuscate what they've done or haven't done, Ricky's a straight talker. Watch here how he not only shows you what he's doing, but in case you don't quite understand it, he also offers a helpful explanation.
I have just squeezed the trigger and it did not fire. I have just squeezed the trigger again and it has not fired.
Who was he aiming the gun at, incidentally?
Regional Australia has yet got another win. Another $1.1 billion for road recovery. Places such as this.
Then there's Sophie Mirabella, who, even though she lost her seat in the last election, looks like she'll lose it even more this time round. It's the result of a bold and innovative campaigning technique.
I had a commitment for a $10 million allocation to the Wangaratta Hospital that if elected I was going to announce the week after the election. You know that. That is $10 million that Wangaratta hasn't had because Cathy got elected.
It is a radical concept, isn't it? Encouraging people to vote for you by not telling them what you will do for them until after they haven't voted for you. Gorg Vander McKenzie from the Institute of whoever's providing the funding. If the government decided that Wangaratta Hospital needed the $10 million before Ms Mirabella was elected, but then decided it didn't need it when she wasn't elected, what possible explanation is there?
Well, the only one I can think of is that the prospect of Miss Mirabella's election was making Wangaratta residents physically ill, and that caused an extra strain on the hospital's resources that was then eased when she didn't win.
Thank you very much, Gorg. But amidst howls of protest that this retrospective pork barrelling was not only pointless but immoral, mind-reading Treasurer Scott Morrison clarified what Ms Mirabella said.
Defending her statement, the Treasurer says what she meant was that she would be able to lobby more effectively because she's part of the coalition.
So some much-needed clarity at last. When she said, I had a commitment, she meant to say, I will lobby more effectively. And when she said, you know that, to the man who nodded yes, he meant to shake his head no and say, don't you mean you will lobby more effectively? But of course, one of the big things that I'm really going to miss because of the election is the old Bill Shorten, seen here shaking hands with the skeleton, and according to this newspaper headline, saying, good to see you, Tony. Sure. This year, though, according to this other headline, he's doing no more zingers. I know, imagine how we felt. In fact, the only one we could find for 2016 is when he weighed in on the battle for the seat of New England between Tony Windsor and Barnaby Joyce.
When it comes to the New England electorate, the contrast between Tony Windsor and Barnaby Joyce couldn't be starker. One is a serious, respected politician. The other's the Deputy Prime Minister.
Of course, it does leave us with the question, who in the party can take over as Clown Prince now that Bill has abdicated his throne to chase his crazy pipe dream of becoming PM? Now, if I'm any judge of comic talent, and remember, I used to be Fabio, I reckon it might be Shadow Minister for Communications Jason Clare. Here he is on an open mic morning on children's show Sunrise, trying out some material about how quickly the government abandoned the idea of the states collecting income tax.
I've had hangovers that have lasted longer than that. I think Britney Spears' first marriage lasted longer than this policy.
Shithouse. Fair enough. I mean, Bill's a hard act to follow. Even Bill at his worst would be better than that. In fact, I think we have some footage of Bill at his worst. Here he is delivering a comeback to Scott Morrison's accusation that he wears an ill-fitting suit.
Now, I think the problem is that Australia's got an ill-fitting treasurer.
I mean, you know, not the best joke in the world, but he was on the project, so it didn't have to be. But nonetheless, he's got that, I don't know what factor, whereas there's something a little bit too slick and polished and Jay Leno-ish about Jason Clare. Bill's more like Daryl Summers, amateurish and non-threatening. To be honest, Bill's probably a much better host if they bring back Hey Hey. So what's Bill going to do to win us over during the campaign if it's not with his zinging? Well, apparently he's been working on his singing. He's hired a voice coach by the name of Dean Frankel. Now, apparently Mr. Frankel is not only a lecturer in public speaking, but he's also a master of the ancient art of throat singing. Now, I want to support Bill's career choices, but I'm never sure it's such a good idea when a man known primarily for his comedy embarks on a singing career. Remember when Eddie Murphy did that reggae album with Snoop Lion? I mean, sure, it was fantastic, but how's Bill going to go when he turns up on 7:30 and tries this? And you may as well have Ian McFarlane on.
Ian McFarlane, thank you for your time.
Pleasure, mate.
Ian McFarlane, thank you very much.
That's a pleasure, mate.
I also know that Bill's voice coach is a qualified hypnotherapist, which explains a lot, because I think he may have put Bill under. And we're back in the room. But that's old Bill, and the question really is, what do I think about our new Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull? Well... Now, I know it's not fashionable for ABC newsreader-outers to editorialise about politics, but I think I speak as one when I say that I like Malcolm Turnbull, and I hope he wins the next election. In fact, I'll be doing all I can in this current series to present items that are in his favour and denigrate the opposition. And I will actually lie, if I have to, about Labor and their stupid policies in order to show the Prime Minister in the best possible light. Now, there are some people out there who might say that's being biased. And I say, well, that's typical of you, isn't it? Because many of you so-called ABC viewers, and I hope I'm not being out of line here, are whiny hypocrites who don't seem to mind it when we push our usual agenda, agrarian communism and compulsory homosexuality. But the moment that we start worshipping a god like Malcolm Turnbull, you start yelling at your TV set about your fucking 8 cents a day and the fact that I swore just then. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to apologise for being wrong, even if I'm not. What I'm doing is believing in a man who, though he's only Prime Minister because 10 people thought Tony Abbott was a worse one, is our Prime Minister. Because unlike you, I believe in this country, a country where anyone, regardless of wealth or the colour of their tie, can challenge a sitting party leader for the highest office in the land, unless it's Kevin Andrews, obviously. Incidentally, please share my rant via Facebook, because the ABC loves that sort of shit. Hopefully we get picked up by Pedestrian TV and Junkie as well. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Still to come. Great Barrier Reef now officially more bleached than Nicki Minaj. And Clive Palmer talks to Liberal MP Ewan Jones like he's a Queensland nickel employee.
And you'll soon be unemployed.
God help us all. G.K. Chesterton's amateur Struth visits the Aussie Cotswolds.
Father Brown, come quickly. Father Weston's holding up the building society. He shot 4 people dead.
A priest shooting people? I think that's highly unlikely, Connie. Don't you?
Yes, Father.
Weston's killing people again.
In the bag, in the bag.
Father Weston. There is talk around town about
your behaviour.
What sort of talk?
That you've been shooting people.
Sorry, what?
That you've been shooting people.
Scuttlebutt and tittle-tattle. Nothing but gossip.
As I expected. Get rid of the bodies and move him to another parish.
This is getting out of hand. That's 4 more people dead.
Yes, it's a sad story, but not of much interest to me.
He's killed 36 people.
I'm not aware of that now.
I've just told you.
I have no recollection of such a conversation.
Why didn't you do anything to stop this?
Obviously, if I knew now what I know now, I would act differently.
Father Brown, Sundays have never been holier.
Welcome back. Now, it takes an African rock python almost a week to digest a gazelle, and the federal budget is no different. With his up-to-date analysis is Mad as Hell's own Financy Boy. Unfortunately, Financy Boy can't be with us for reasons of editorial policy, and fair enough too. Instead, we're joined by veteran ABC bookkeeper Wilhelmina Different.
Well, one thing you can be certain about, ScoMo, Scott Morrison, has arrived with this, his first FIBU, federal budget. In terms of income tax cuts, there's something in the budget for everyone, whether you're a barrister, an orthopaedic surgeon or a bank CEO. Smokers are doing the heavy lifting this time, which doesn't sound terribly advisable, but that was predicted by Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen.
He'll announce an increase in the tobacco exercise.
The tobacco exercise. Yeah, that'd be rolling your own, presumably. Look, Shaun, reviews haven't been kind, with outgoing Liberal Senator and pornographic novelist Dennis Jensen dubbing the budget a fudged opportunity, or fudget. Still, he was kinder than extremely crossbench Senator Jackie Lambie.
If you're a pensioner, this budget proves that the Liberal Party hates your guts. And if you're a sick pensioner, this budget proves the Liberal Party hates your guts even more.
Proximity to power deludes some into thinking they wield it.
Excellent Turnbull government debut budget, or the budget. Shaun.
Thank you, Wilhelmina. Of course, it's not so much about what's on the pages inside the budget as it is about the selling of it. It's like a Dan Brown novel. And in terms of getting the message out there via social media, the budget website is fantastic. You can put in some details and actually have the budget personalised so you don't get all that irrelevant stuff about how it might affect the rest of the country. On the plus side, though, what this budget has done is give Malcolm Turnbull and Scott Morrison a chance to become friends again. Here they are, sharing a pot of tea. Scott explaining what the budget will do to help them win the election, and Malcolm demonstrating what he will do to Scott if it doesn't. The big ticket item, of course, is tax. And the PM recently gave us an interesting insight into the philosophy behind taxation.
If you want people to do less of something, you jack up the tax.
So taxation is a way of discouraging certain activities, Dramella Burt, from the Prime Minister's office.
Well, that's right, Shaun. You have a tobacco excise tax to discourage smoking. You have a consumption tax to discourage eating. You have an income tax to discourage earning money, which you need less of anyway if you're not smoking or eating. You have a payroll tax to discourage people being employed, superannuation tax to discourage planning for the future, and if for those reasons people decide they can't stand living here anymore, you have a departure tax to discourage them from leaving.
Thank you, Dramella. But there is one line in the budget that affects all of us, regardless of how much tax we pay, because if there's one thing the government knows, is that the best way to unite all Australians is to have them huddle together in fear.
Good God, no!
As most of you are aware, particularly if you live in South Australia, we're getting $50 billion worth of our next submarines from France, a country whose last notable use of their submariner capabilities was to help members of their Secret Service escape after they sank the Rainbow Warrior back in 1985. Mind you, the other contenders, Germany and Japan, haven't really done anything submarine-wise since about the 1940s, so perhaps it's fair we gave them a miss. And they were absolutely fine about it. One thing you can say about Germany and Japan is that they don't cause you any trouble if you cross them. But will the French give us value for money? I spoke to Rear Vice Admiral Sir Bobo Gargle yesterday, and he agreed to come in and talk to me tonight. Rear, if I can call you that, $50 billion for 12 subs. It sounds like a decent lunch for Clive Palmer, but is it good value?
$50 billion for 3,000 jobs? I should think so, Shaun. That's a spend of about 16 mil per job. Now, there's 730,000 unemployed people in Australia. Do you realise, for that sort of price, we could achieve full employment for little less than $12 trillion?
All right, I don't know whether it's about full employment, Bobo. According to the Defence Minister, Maurice Payne,
we are, in fact, across a number of areas, working very hard for the voters of the entire country, and particularly South Australia, of course, in the interests of my colleagues from South Australia.
So, working hard in the interests of not so much national security as her colleagues in South Australia, to look after not so much everybody as the voters, presumably the voters of the Liberal Party.
That's right, Shaun. There's no point stuffing more pork in the barrel than you need. I remember when I was a cadet on the HMAS Sydney, whenever it was my turn to get in the barrel, it was always wise to limit how much of myself I actually put into it, if you get my meaning.
Mercifully, I don't.
Not that Maurice is playing politics with something as serious as border protection. I mean, that sort of thing is all very well and good for your Wangaratta hospitals and the building of our new frigates, but I think you'll find, Shaun, that $50 billion for submarines to patrol our sovereign waters is a drop in the ocean.
Of course, the competitive evaluation process has taken time, most of it is to work out exactly what the expression meant. Further delays are expected because it's a local build. Presumably because why? What, South Australians are a bit slower than everybody else? Bit of a stereotype, isn't it? Mark Colvin, and frankly, beneath you. I can't stand stereotypes. Presumably it's also going to take time because the French are in charge and they spend a lot of their time delivering onions on their bikes and becoming alcoholics as children and having three-way sex with each other. As a result of all this, this bloke reckons
an early delivery of the first submarine or two is probably not going to happen now. And that means that we're absolutely going to have to extend the life of some of the Collins submarine fleet.
Dr. Eldon Tyrell, is it possible to extend the life of these old submarines?
Well, I'm afraid that's a little out of my jurisdiction.
They want more life, Father.
To make any sort of alteration is fatal, Shaun. A coding sequence cannot be revised once it's been established.
Why not?
Because by the second day, reversion mutations give rise to revertant colonies, like rats leaving a sinking ship. Then the ship sinks.
Yeah, but aren't submarines supposed to disappear under the water?
The light that burns twice as bright burns half as long, Shaun. And the Collins class has burned so very, very brightly.
Thank you, Doctor. The Defence Minister has also said we need submarines with considerable range. By comparison, what sort of range do the Collins-class submarine have, Bobo Gargle?
About 3 octaves, Shaun. Which is why you can hear them from quite some distance away.
And 3 octaves up to what note?
High C, of course.
Thank you so much, Bobo, and please accept, on behalf of Mad As, this beautiful framed limited release print of a French submarine.
That's very kind of you, Shaun, but I would prefer a limited release of the Kraken! Look what you've done to him, you monster!
Well, wasn't our fault? You blame the ABC. They're the ones who made us wait a year before we got back on. Still to come.
How could a cephalopod have a skeleton?
Shut up or I'll push your eyes in. Governor-General goes overseas to shake hands with more people who aren't Tanya Plibersek. And how losing the submarine deal will affect our relationship with Japan. So how would you describe the Japanese psyche?
It's a fermented rice wine. It's quite delicious, actually.
Next, 4 men from regional Australia, no prospects, seek a relationship very different from the one they're currently having with the Coles-Woolworths duopoly. Then, much-loved Aussie funny man Bobo Woollahorski confronts his gluten intolerance, and later, the ABC overcorrects the perception of its bias by allowing a right-wing commentator to present something.
Well, welcome back. Well, 6 sites around the country have been shortlisted to be the home of Australia's first nuclear waste dump. And now the government has chosen its preferred site. And the winner is Bundyuta, South Australia.
What a great name.
Now, the waste dump looks like being established on land owned by former Liberal Party Senator Grant Chapman. Wow. I mean, I'd heard the Scientologists get a bit nasty if you leave them, but that's really letting him have it, isn't it? Announcing the announcement, Resources Minister Josh Frydenberg noted that we currently have in total around 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of low-level radioactive waste. Certainly explains Grant Hackett's recent behaviour. Speaking of sport, sport's coming up later with all the latest in sport, but first, sport. Now, if bank bashing was an Olympic event, it'd be no surprise given the other shite they trot out as sport, and Australia would be guaranteed of gold, particularly after the recent bipartisan attacks on the big banks' lending practices. Zenzi filed this background report.
Well, we've always wanted to possess a luxury harbourside home with views of a boat between us and a beautiful white centre column staircase lit by a French chandelier and contrasting pink Persian themed master bedroom with an ensuite bowling alley and a golden bathroom with a Chinaman in it and grand entry underground motor court with, I don't know, an Aston Martin Vantage and a vintage Rolls and a BMW SUV. I mean, it was our dream home, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The ANZ loaned the Micallefs all the money they needed, despite their debts and liability already exceeding several $1 million.
I mean, I've got $62,500 worth of credit card debt alone.
We was just stunned at their inability to see through our audacity.
They're stunned and surprised.
The mortgage broker involved filled out 2 low-doc applications incorrectly and provided 0 proof of earnings to the ANZ.
I was stunned that it was that easy. Sally and Bob never stood a chance. What with such drastically lowered lending standards and my lack of integrity.
It was 2006 and the Micallefs were, like many Australians, stupid and greedy. Fortunately, the GFC was just around the corner to save them. Just before they were about to default on their patently unserviceable loan, the Reserve Bank slashed interest rates and the then typical Labor government threw stimulus money at home buyers.
I mean, we bought a plasma screen TV.
What, too?
Oh, I mean, where are the regulators to stop people like us?
Wasn't madness.
But a fish rots from its head down, as any customer of Go Sushi will tell you. The Australian government has a deficit of $400 billion, yet still it's able to borrow enormous sums of money from unwary countries like China to fund its lavish lifestyle. We were stunned.
I mean, we kept issuing these virtually worthless government securities and they keep giving us money.
If they did their due diligence, they wouldn't be in this mess and we wouldn't have this, frankly, unserviceable debt.
I don't know what APRA are doing wasting their time investigating ComInsure and people like me when the deficit is an accident waiting to continue happening. No point hoping and praying for another GFC to come along and make it all better. If they ask me, the government should live within their means. Of course, if they did ask me, I would charge an undisclosed fee for that advice.
No punchline. Not coming up because Comedy Showroom is on next, although you can already watch it on iView. Cadbury's giant chocolate Kim Il-sung tasteless, claims Politburo. Grant Hackett shifts his focus to the Paralympics. And Andrew Bolt dares ask the question of our former Prime Minister that no one else would.
Have you been listening to my radio show?
Well, unless you've been living under a rock, you'd know that the Logies were on Sunday, in which case I wish I was there with you. What a farce! And I'm not talking about the glaring omission from the most outstanding drama category of Call and Win Cash Live. No, I'm talking about Australian television's Nobel Prize, the Gold Logie. Have a look at the work of these nominees and tell me if justice was done. Grant Denyer.
With
Essie Davis. Waleed Ali.
Oversimplified.
Scott Cam.
Clout.
Carrie Bickmore.
One.
And of course, Leland Chin.
Penises.
Now you tell me she wasn't robbed. Goodbye.
Jive, baby.